Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen, and trying to make good on my promise to start listening to more new music in 2023. So the year's a third of the way through. Let's start off with the big one, Metallica and 72 Seasons. Now, a little bit of background on my relationship with Metallica. I used to be in rock radio, actually active rock radio, which is like a harder rock format. In the mid-late 90s up until the early 2000s, and our station played Metallica like clockwork every 75 minutes. They were huge. Metallica ruled the airwaves back in that time, and not only did we play them every 75 minutes, but I hosted a show called Mandatory Metallica. A lot of rock stations did this back then, and my Mandatory Metallica, my format was 4 Metallica songs every weeknight at the same time. 2 of them kind of more of their rock hits, and then 2 of the more obscure Metallica songs. So this was like 20-25 minutes of straight Metallica every night, in addition to like the Metallica every 75 minutes. So a whole lot of Metallica. And by the time I'd switched formats and gone on to modern AC, that's when, like Death Magnetic came out and Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I only heard those albums like sporadically. I think I heard them each once. When I was doing the Metallica on the radio, it was the era of load and then reload, which I wasn't a fan of. This whole symphony thing, which I didn't care for a lot. And then Garage Incorporated, which rock radio played a lot more attention to disc 1, which had like Whiskey in the Jar and Turn the Page covers. Wasn't really into those at all. So by the time those later releases came out, I was completely burnt out on Metallica. Didn't really have any interest in this one until I heard it at the record store and was like, wow, this is actually pretty good. This reminds me of some earlier Metallica. It's got a little bit of recycled, riffage going on in it, but that's all right. But yeah, I really, really was surprised. I was actually really impressed by this Metallica when I got a chance to actually listen to it and pay full attention to it. It's a really, really long album. So I listened to it kind of in sections, which you can do. You can listen to half of it and go back and listen to another half of it a couple weeks later, and it's almost like a new Metallica album. But yeah, it's a long album, but it's full of a lot of great, more like in the vein of hard rock songs rather than like classic metal. Gone are those great time signature changes and the sections, the different sections of the songs like they used to have, where one would be completely different. You kind of go on a different journey with each song. They've kind of abandoned that and gone for straight ahead rock, hard rock, pretty much. And it's upset a lot of people, apparently. I've seen a few reviews on this, like 3 or 4 for this album. I didn't watch any album reviews at all on YouTube for any of the other albums that I'm talking about. But for Metallica, I've seen like 3 or 4 reviews. Saw Mr. Hall of Fame's review was one of them. And people either love this or hate it, it seems like. It's very polarizing. But yeah, I think what people don't like is they've kind of gotten away from the classic metal and gone, like I said, it's more for straight ahead hard rock. The beats are pretty much consistent through the whole thing. It's like 4 on the floor, almost disco, beats, where it's through the whole entire thing. The only time you hear any like real imagination with the drumming is just like pickups to get to the next solid beat, and it's that same beat pretty much all the way through the song, which I like. For instance, I do, like I run a mile about every other day on treadmill, and the first 2 tracks, the opening track, which is the title track, the following track. Opening track is like 7.5 minutes long, and I'm running, and I'm done with my mile before I even realize it. It just gets you into this zone. It's great running music. Not so much lifting. Lifting music is more for like the earlier stuff, but to just get on a run, just kind of get lost in this driving beat. It is kind of seeming like maybe like Metallica on cruise control, because it's just like bam, they're off and running and they just keep on going. But it's like cruise control at 100. Still intense, still ferocious, really loud, really aggressive rock. But like I said, doesn't have those time signature changes, doesn't have those different passages like their older metal stuff does. And a lot of people have complained that these guys are old now and they don't rock like they used to. Well, they're in their 60s. It happens. We all get older. I don't care if you're 18 or you're 60. You get older every day, and these guys don't rock like they did in the 80s. Well, guess what? No shit. There's a lot of things I don't do like I did when I was 22 years old. Like, to keep it G-rated, how about glasses? I never had to wear eyeglasses until like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And now I'm to the point where I can't read anything unless I've got glasses on. So, we'd all love to be 22 forever, and have that kind of energy and that kind of stamina. And it's not a thing. So, these guys still keep going. They've still got their sound. You still know it's Metallica. And like I said, I was really pleasantly surprised by this album. I did not expect to like this as much as I did. There's a few mid-tempo kind of tracks where they kind of bring it down a little bit in the middle of the album. Maybe I would have preferred them just prune those, just ditch those tracks, and come up with a nice, lean, mean, fire all the way through album, like maybe 45 minutes long like they used to do back in the 80s. Keep it tight. They didn't do that. Like I said, this is a really, really long album. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's bloated. I mean, it's killer pretty much all the way through. So Metallica 72 Seasons, that cover has got people divided too with the bright, bright yellow. I don't know who's in the marketing department, but I like it. I like the cover. You could see it from a mile away. Well, maybe not a mile away, especially with my eyesight now, but from a few yards away. You know it's Metallica. They've pretty much taken ownership of the color yellow for at least a few months. That's going to be, if it's bright, bright yellow like that, you're going to immediately think Metallica. And I like the cover. I like the music. And like I said, really surprising, this Metallica release. Now, before I get to this next review, I just got to say happy birthday to Willie Nelson, turning 90 years old on the day that I'm recording this video. So, wow, he's still putting out releases. He still sounds like good old Willie Nelson. And his latest is called I Don't Know a Thing About Love, a tribute to the songs of Harlan Howard. Now, if you're not familiar with Harlan Howard, he was a legendary country music songwriter. He wrote all kinds of songs. And one thing about this album, beyond just loving Willie Nelson, I've been a huge fan of Willie Nelson for decades, since I was a little kid. I own most of his Columbia albums, a few albums from other eras as well. This is, by the way, it's his 73rd studio album, and that's not even counting live albums or collaborations, and those albums where he teamed up with Merle Haggard and, of course, Waylon Jennings. He teamed up with, Ray Price on an album. He's got, the Highwaymen. That's not even counting all those. Just solo studio albums. This is his 73rd. So happy birthday, Willie. Awesome that Willie is still with us and still feels like, hey, I'm going to put out another album. And he did. And it's all a tribute to Harlan Howard, like I said. Legendary songwriter. And this album to me was an education into, wow, he wrote that song. Wow, he wrote that song. I didn't know he wrote that. I didn't know he wrote Life Turned Her That Way. I thought Mel Tillis wrote that song. I didn't know that he wrote Streets of Baltimore. I thought Bobby Bare wrote that. He writes songs, and you think that they're signature songs for the people who do them like they wrote them themselves. But no, it's all Harlan Howard. I Got a Tiger by the Tail, the Buck Owens song. Co-wrote that with Buck. So Willie does all these, and of course, in Willie Nelson's style, he makes them his own as well. So a lot of great stuff on here. Chokin' Kind is on here as well. And so Waylon Jennings made that big. By the way, Life Turned Her That Way. Mel Tillis first came out with that, made a hit. Ricky Van Shelton remade it, had another hit with that in the 80s. Busted, the Ray Charles song. If you don't know a lot about country music, he also wrote Busted that Ray Charles did. And then country singer John Conley had a hit with that in the 80s. So these songs have been hits for people like multiple times for different people. So now Willie's doing them, and like I said, he still sounds like Willie. The guy's 90 years old, though, or he's 90 years old today. So you got to give him a little bit of slack there. It does kind of have that old man production on it. Buddy Cannon is the producer. He produced a lot of Willie Nelson, among other people. So great to have him team back up with him again. But they definitely have that full-on, blown-out mid-range that they put on older people's voices to give them a little more oomph, a little more power. Same thing with Ozzy Osbourne on his latest. So there's your Ozzy Osbourne, Willie Nelson comparison. But I'm not sure Willie Nelson he's always had such an old soul style. He always sounds like just such a laid back, I'm just doing my thing. I don't know what all you other people are doing. I'm Willie Nelson. I'm doing my thing. And he does it again on this album. Now, the crazy thing about this album, again called I Don't Know a Thing About Love, a tribute to Harlan Howard, is it's not yet available on vinyl. I might get this when it is available. It's not available until May. middle of May, somewhere around there, which is next month, through Vinyl Me Please. And it's definitely got that Vinyl Me Please price point, especially if you're like me and you're not a member of Vinyl Me Please. You're going to pay a little more. Currently, it's only available on CD, so might just end up getting that. But yeah, Willie Nelson, it's great to still have Willie with us. The backing band here is produced, so they're kind of like in the back. Willie's right up front. The producer knows, he knows why we're here. We're here to hear Willie Nelson. His family band, a lot of those people, unfortunately, have passed away at this point, so the music's kind of generic. But if you know country... But if you know... The music's kind of generic, but if you know country music, even just 80s stuff, you will know a lot of these songs already. But the Harlan Howard goes back to the 60s and even before that. So Willie Nelson's I Don't Know a Thing About Love, a tribute to the music of Harlan Howard. Definitely recommended. And again, loving some Willie Nelson. Love to see him back out with a new album. Up next, Yo La Tengo. Now, Yo La Tengo have been around. This is like, what, their 18th or 19th album, something like that. I had no idea they had that many albums out. And I don't know what other people are saying about this. Like I said, I didn't, watch a lot of other album reviews except for the Metallica one. But I kind of dug this a little bit, I guess. Their new album is called This Stupid World. They've been around since like the 80s, about 40 years at this point. Still calling themselves indie rock. It's husband and wife. You got Ira Kaplan, Georgia Hubley. They're together, still making music after all these years. I heard a couple of albums from Yo La Tengo. Didn't pay a lot of attention to them back in the 90s. Not sure what they've been up to in the entire, current century. But, I thought, Yo La Tengo, I recognize the name. I'll see what this is all about. This seems to be a pretty popular album. And kind of got like a Sonic Youth sound. Kind of got like a little noise rock going on there. The first song is called Sinatra Drive Breakdown. And it's basically this drumming beat, this kind of groove they got going for over 7 minutes. Real simple stuff with this guitar like scratching, this kind of distorted, like they're just abusing the guitar. Again, the noise rock thing. Vocals seem pretty cool. It's kind of more, I thought when I was hearing this, because I listen to all these albums like 4 or 5 times. I thought the first time I heard this, it was more of like an intro song, and we were going to get fuller and broader with the music as it went on. But no, this turned out to be one of the better songs on the album. A lot of droning stuff, a lot of noise, a lot of very simple melodies. Tonight's episode especially. Now that's a real acoustic kind of nice melody going on. And then they just layer this like nonstop like noise over the top of it. It kind of sounds like they're in the garage just doing this like nice little acoustic number, but Dad's got to work on his grinding machine. And he's grinding away over there on the metal going rah, 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 while they're recording. I don't know if there's going to be remixes done where they just take that out, but it kind of goes with it, but it kind of starts getting a little annoying. You really got to listen. It makes you listen for the melodies kind of underneath all this noise and sludge and everything. You got to kind of pick those out. So this does take a couple of listens, but then after a couple more listens, you're like, yeah, how about we just lose the noise? The female singer, like I said, Georgia Hubley, she comes in about track 4 or so. She's got a really great voice. She had a nice, pleasant voice before. Nice to see that they're still together, making music together. But again, very simple melodies, very simple stuff, and then clouded with all of this different noise rock type of stuff going on. So it's kind of like annoying in a way, but in another way, like I said, it kind of makes you listen a little bit for the melodies. I'm not crazy about it. I don't hate it. I'm kind of right in the middle with this. It's just kind of like, okay, that's pretty cool. It starts off, like I said, with that Sinatra Drive Breakdown, where it's got the beat, it's got the groove. You're like, okay, this is kind of grooving. I can get into this a little bit. And it goes on and on and on, of course. By the time you're at the end of the album, like the last couple of tracks, which are, again, about 7.5 minutes long each, it's kind of wound down to this. You're kind of gone into a nod at this point where you're just kind of like, okay. And it starts droning, and that last, the title track is like the second to last track, This Stupid World. You're in this drone. It's kind of like, and you're just, I don't know if it's a good thing. Maybe if you've got insomnia and you're trying to like drift off This album could be the cure for that. The only thing that I really didn't care for a lot is tracks like Brain Capers, where it's gone beyond just the drone and the mellowness, and it's gone more into like sleepiness and like lackadaisical, just kind of like, I'm just not even really going to sing anymore. I'm just going to kind of half talk through the song, and I'm not really saying anything too brilliant. Didn't really care for tracks like that. But overall, Yo La Tengo's new album, This Stupid World, is just kind of like middle of the road, but the sound definitely isn't middle of the road. But my opinion of it is kind of like, I could go one way. If somebody hated this album, I could understand why. If somebody was absolutely in love with it, I could understand that too. Myself, I'm right in the middle somewhere. Then you got Iggy Pop, another elder statesman who's still getting it done, still putting out music, even though I'm sure he doesn't have to. He just wants to. He's totally got his own thing going on. He's getting up there in years as well, just like Willie Nelson. But you know what? Where's the Willie Nelson Iggy Pop collaboration? That is what I want. You know, I was talking about how Willie Nelson has collaborated with all these people on these albums. Where is the Willie Nelson Iggy Pop album? Can you imagine? I mean, they both got their own style. They both got play by their own rules. I mean, that would be something to hear. Willie Nelson, Iggy Pop album. But anyway, Iggy Pop's latest album is called Every Loser, and it's rocking. That's for sure. Very first line you hear on this album is, "I got a dick and two balls." Now, I hear this and I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if you know this about me or not, but I myself have a dick and two balls. So I could really relate to that line, you know. I actually have more than just two, if you're counting like eyeballs and like the balls on my feet and, you know, like ball and socket joints. So I got all kinds of balls. But got the dick too. So I'm right there with Iggy Pop on that very first line of the first song. Now I heard that, and seriously, I thought, okay, now we're trying a little too hard here to be Mr. Punk. I got a dick and two, but come on. And the song is called Frenzy, and he's talking about a fucking prick and a goddamn dick and a stone douchebag, and we don't know who he's talking about, but he's got a lot of hate for whoever this is. He's got those balls. Maybe he should have named some names, but yeah, it's just this visceral, like, hate. I hate whoever this person is, and calling him all kinds of names, saying all kinds of bad things about him, and he hates this, I hate that. It's just this laundry list of things he's pissed off about, and I'm like, okay, straight out of the gate, I hope that's like a fireball out of the gate, and we're not going to have a whole album like that, and we don't. It's an opening track. It's supposed to get your attention. It's supposed to like kind of like, bam, here I am. I'm making my stand right away, and now we're going to get to the real album with a song called Strung Out Johnny. Great keyboard in there, kind of a menacing keyboard, a little bit of 80s, a little bit of menace in there. Well, kind of like an 80s horror movie, basically. But great song, actually. I was kind of surprised at the catchiness coming from Iggy Pop with Strung Out Johnny. Atlantis, he kind of goes into more of his down voice like this. Kind of sounding like Billy Idol. You know, he's kind of sounded like Billy Idol on that Blah 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 album in the 80s. I realized that Billy Idol came out like a decade after Iggy Pop did, but just to describe the sound, it's like Billy Idol 45 played on 33 and a third on this Atlantis song. But he's got that, you know, because Iggy Pop's got all kinds of different ways he approaches his vocals, and that's the low Billy Idol thing he's doing on Atlantis. He's got a song called Modern Day Ripoff that follows that, where, you know, he bounces right back, and now he sounds like he was a member of the Stooges, you know. So he's got that whole thing going on. He's still got that, you know, kind of right in your face voice on that song. It's a great song. And by the way, this album has a whole host of people who were also invited to the party, like Chad Smith, Duff McKagan's on here, Dave Navarro, Stone Gossard, and the late Taylor Hawkins. This was probably one of the last things he was involved in, I would assume. And so a lot of great players, but they don't really make themselves known. It's all Iggy on the. I mean, there's some great guitar riffs. There's some crunchy riffs in there every once in a while. But you don't. I can't really listen to this and go, "Oh man, that's totally Dave Navarro." Oh man, that's absolutely Duff McKagan's bass. You know, it just sounds like a rock band playing with Iggy Pop. I think some of that probably has to do with the production, which is my complaint with this album. Is it's the production sounds very boxy in a lot of places, especially a song called Neo Punk, which comes up later on in the album. That's the most extreme example of this, where it's just like a ball of noise. Now, Iggy Pop, obviously known for cranking it all the way in the red, you know, plug it in, crank it up, play it, punk rock stuff. That's not really the sound, though. This is not raw power. This is not 70s bump up the controls and blast it out like, you know, Alice Cooper Schools Out or something. This is a different kind of a distorted kind of compression. This is more like what you hear on a lot of pop music that's made for cheap earbuds. It's that kind of sound, and it's not inviting to me. I don't want to hear that. And neopunk is where it's all blasted out. It's very boxy sounding, very brick-walled. It's the kind of sound that killed off CDs the first time around. You know, well, actually, that the only time around that CDs have been killed off. Late 90s, early 2000s, when everything, you'd play it and all the CDs would be like this on the meters. It wouldn't move because they were produced with that kind of brick wall. You'd see the wave file and it just looked like that. That's neopunk on this album. I do wish that was toned down a little bit and everything was a little more clear and spaced out, so it sounded like a real hard, aggressive band playing right in front of you. I mean, we do have that technology, but this is all that kind of brick-walled stuff, and neopunk is like I said, the most extreme example of that. It's not as bad on other parts of the album, but yeah, a rock experience all the way through. He's still got the attitude. Anybody that starts an album with, I got a dick and two balls, I mean, I guess that's attitude. I also have 10 fingers and 2 lips, you know, anyway. He got a song on there called Morning Show, where he takes it down a lot. He actually sounds kind of reflective and even melancholy. Kind of sounds like Johnny Cash on his, you know, much later, those American recordings, you know, that he did with Rick Rubin, where, you know, I hurt myself, you know, that kind of thing. It's called Morning Show. It's all about I got to get up and put on my face for the morning show. He just keeps saying that over and over again. Should have been on a morning show like I was on for years. On radio, you don't have to worry about doing up your face. But anyway, another great song called Comments that brings Iggy right into today's culture with the lyrics. All about selling your face to Hollywood and you know, people self-obsessed and that kind of thing. But yeah, Iggy Pop's Every Loser, pleasantly surprised. Didn't know it was going to be this good. I do wish it didn't have a lot of that full-on, you know, modern digital compression on there. But, you know, you can't have everything. But you can have Iggy Pop, and that's great to still have him around as well. Now, for the new albums I listened to for this year, I mean, there's obviously groups that I've known about for years, like Metallica and Depeche Mode. And, you know, I'll get to that later on, Iggy Pop, Willie Nelson. But I also listened to groups and artists that I knew nothing about, like this band called Inhaler from Ireland. Now, with a name like Inhaler, the album is called Cuts and Bruises, and it's got like a kind of a black and white cover of the band on the front. I thought maybe it would be like kind of heavier stoner rock, something like that. You know, Inhaler, no, it's not like that. It's mostly like Britpop, even though like they're from Ireland. The difference between Britpop and American pop is with the Britpop, they're playing real instruments, which I can always appreciate no matter what it is. I'm not a fan at all of like in the box production where everything is, we don't need a drummer, let's just play a drum loop through the whole thing. We don't, you know, everything is just not into it. So these guys at least are playing real instruments, but it's definitely on the pop leaning side. Songs like Just to Keep You Satisfied, you know, it's sweet, it's nice, it's got a little bit of rock going on there, but not too much. It's bouncy, kind of a little bit of a lazy kind of sound there. Love Will Get You There follows that. It's a little brighter, I guess. It's optimistic even in its lyrics, which are kind of, I don't know, a little bit pandering. So Far So Good. Am I actually hearing electric birds at the beginning of that? I think that's what those are supposed to be. So yeah, Inhaler to me, by the time I'm on like song 3 or 4, I'm like, oh yeah, this is absolutely not stoner rock. This is kind of more of a pop rock thing going on. And by the way, I said they were from Ireland. I didn't mention that this band features the son of Bono from U2. His name, or from U2, however you say it, his name is Elijah Hewson. And so he's a part of this. You can kind of hear a little bit of Bono in his voice on certain songs more than ever, especially in the song called Dublin and Ecstasy. Now that's probably the track I like the most on the album. It's got a little bit more going on, a little more of a soundscape there. The lyrics are not syrupy like in some of the other songs. So Dublin and Ecstasy is pretty cool. But yeah, I am not into things like if you're gonna break my heart, break it into pieces, because I won't need it again. Bro, dude, really? Come on. So yeah, they're definitely playing to the teen crowd or the lovey-dovey people with a little bit of guitar in there for sound. But yeah, if you're gonna break my heart, break it into pieces, because I'm not gonna need it again. No, I'm gonna pass on that. I mean, this dude, like 3 tracks later, is literally asking you to be his Valentine. So it's that kind of music and that kind of album. Inhaler is who they are. They're called indie rock, but it's the son of the guy from U2. They're getting write-ups apparently in major magazines, and they're on Polydor. So I'm not. It's only their second album, so I don't know how indie this is. But Inhaler, Cuts and Bruises is the album. Love the real instruments. Some of the songs are better than others, but could definitely do without. Again, if you're going to break my heart, break it into pieces, because I'm not going to need it. And won't you please be my Valentine? So with these albums, I've talked about groups that are, artists that have been around for a long, long, long time, that I've known about for decades. I've talked about artists that have been around for a while that I don't know anything about. New artists I didn't know anything about. These guys are from the Netherlands, and they've been around since about 2009, but their sound is more like an R&B sound from the mid-60s or early 70s. They're called DeWolff. And the artwork, first of all, on their album is great. It's a nice gatefold thing going on there. But they're listed at a lot of places under psychedelic. And I don't know that they're that psychedelic. They're not psychedelic at all, actually. So I was expecting some sort of neo-psychedelic stuff, some weird way-out stuff with a lot of different things going on. And that's not what really this is. This is a kind of a throwback sound, kind of a retro sound going on, like I said, with the early R&B stuff, mid-60s, early 70s, soul type stuff. So, and they're from the South Netherlands. So they're from the South. It's just the South Netherlands. But very fun album, very, very generous album, because it's kind of long. It's about an hour long. A lot of music on here, but it's fun stuff. They sound like they're having fun. I know it's a couple of brothers in the band, but I think the band's, it's like, we're talking like 8 or 9 people in this thing. And they kind of have like maybe a Black Crowes kind of Jay Giles vibe going on. Like, it's your, Blue-Eyed Soul type thing. Newer guys trying to sound like that retro sound. Sometimes I think they force it a little bit too much. Like the very opening track, Night Train, it comes on, it's like, oh, everybody come on board to Night Train. It's a little cringe, to be honest. It's kind of forced a little bit. I'm not quite into that. But when they kind of step away from that and just kind of do their own vocal type thing and just be a little more natural, it's really cool. Jackie Go to Sleep is like a song like maybe track 4 or something like that, where they slow things down. It's a nice ballad. It's actually kind of beautiful, really. And kind of more in the Allman Brothers vein. So they've got a lot of different influences, but it's all that same realm of, like I said, the classic R&B soul sound. They got the horn section. They got the female backup singers. Like I said, Black Crowes kind of vibe going on. Jay Giles Band kind of sound. With the Jay Giles Band, too, it's like these guys would probably be the band to see live. On the record, it's said that these tracks are all recorded live with no overdubs, no editing, no whatever. They're just thrown on. You plug it in, you throw it on the tape over like a week span in the studio. So you can definitely tell they're having a good time. It makes you want to have a good time. A lot of fun, upbeat songs. Like I said, beautiful ballads. But they do kind of try to. There's some instances where they do try to mimic a little too much and push it a little too far. There's a really ambitious 15-minute song called Rosita, where in the middle of that there's a talking part, and it's like that. So I'm not into that. They kind of step more into the Blues Brothers territory, if you know what I mean. The movie's great, but I am not into the Blues Brothers music and albums and stuff like that. I don't like that at all. So step away from the Blues Brothers. Get back to the Black Crowes and the Jay Giles Band. But Mr. Garbage Man is another one where it's just like, I was talking about that Inhaler lyric where it's like, if you're going to break my heart, smash it into a million pieces because I'll never need it again. It's a whole song of that. Mr. Garbage Man, take my arms. I can't use those anymore because I can't hold her. Take my eyes because I don't need those because I can't see her anymore. Maybe they should have, could have like taken a little bit from Iggy Pop and said, Mr. Garbage Man, take my dick and balls because I don't need those because she won't let me You get the idea. They did not do that, by the way. But that actually that would have made a really good country song.
Well, you might as well take my dick and my balls, 'cause I won't be needing them anymore at all. Oh, hold on, wait, I forgot about taking a leak.
But beautiful ballad called Pure Love towards the end has much more of a natural sound with the vocalist. He just sounds more like a real, like he's, being a little more real. And again, not trying to mimic, not trying quite so hard to mimic a sound from earlier days and from people, real soulful, like belt out, I think when it goes more in that direction, it's less appealing to me. I like the more natural stuff. But like I said, an incredibly fun album. These guys are super talented, the whole band. You can tell there's a lot of talent there. And like I said, if they ever come around in concert, this would be a concert I'd actually like to see, because they have, similar to, like I said, like the Jay Giles Band, they have that thing where you want to see them in concert. That's probably the best way to experience this band. But unfortunately, I looked at their itinerary, and they're playing all over Europe, and they're not anytime soon coming to the U.S. So once again, DeWolff is their name. Awesome gatefold artwork there. Try to get the color vinyl if I ever get the record of this. Overall, good stuff from DeWolff. Now let's talk about the new Depeche Mode. It's called Memento Mori, and I don't know what people think about this. I'm listening to this kind of cold, and it seems just very, very morose. Depeche Mode, no strangers to putting out kind of gloomy albums. That's not all they do, but they do have their run of that. The Black Celebration from '86 comes to mind. But this is definitely in that vein. Now, they have lost Andrew Fletcher. Unfortunately, he passed away, and they're going on without him. And that seems to be a lot of what's going on here. A lot of recalling death in the lyrics, of different death, like literal life ending, and then the death of love, and the death of hope, and just it just goes on and on and on. You've got, defiantly living isolated in a bubble. You're watching angels die. You've got dead love, and that's just the first three songs. So yeah, that gives you an idea of where we're going, and it never really goes anywhere else. It's just more and more loss and death and darkness. And so if that's the Depeche Mode you're into, you're going to love this album. If you're looking for like personal Jesus, or just can't get enough, or something like that, you ain't gonna find that here. I can tell you that right now. But yeah, this is all about the more melancholy, morose Depeche Mode mode. So yeah, that's this album basically. These guys are older now. They're celebrating that fact. If you look at the inner artwork, Martin Gore they all look old, but Martin Gore especially, he looks like ancient. And the photography and the way that it's presented, it kind of like it emphasizes that, that look at every little wrinkle. It's like Iggy Pop does when he wants you to see every scar and wrinkle and let you know just how old he is. It's like Metallica on 72 Seasons. If you look at the inner artwork of that, they got pictures that are very similar to the pictures in here. All the black and white with the shadows showing every wrinkle. And so they're definitely embracing that and emphasizing that they're old. And even Martin Gore, the first song you hear from him called Headed for the Sky, he's talking about he's ready. He's ready to take his soul up to the sky. He's ready to die. And it's like, man, is there any kind of release from this? And there's not. The whole album seems like there's this longing for contentment or some sort of resolve, and it never happens. It's just a lot of just doom and gloom. And like I said, if that's the Depeche Mode you want, you are going to love this album. Now, one of my favorites on here is called People Are Good. It takes a little bit of a break from that, but it's still very cynical, talking about just keep telling yourself, just keep talking under your breath, just keep saying people are good, people are good. I don't recommend that. I'd rather right up front that people are horrible for the most part. I wouldn't tell people to lie to themselves like that, but that's what, Dave Gahan wants you to do. It's actually kind of a sarcastic kind of song, I think. That kind of like cynicism and sarcastic, it kind of lightens the mood a little bit, if you can believe that. There's songs like Before We Drown where you're swimming and you're just swimming into nothing. You're basically going into a void. Just a lot of that kind of thing on this album, and it really there's a, kind of a lack of brilliance. I can understand with the recent death of Andrew Fletcher, and they're kind of known for being gloomy anyway, but there seems to be a lack of, like I said, a lack of brilliance on this album. You're waiting for something that's going to be like, wow, he really says it all right there, and it never really happens. There's never that really turn of a phrase or a really clever like two-line thing or something. I mean, don't we turn to these songwriters to express things that we mere mortals can't? I mean, that's why we have these albums, is to kind of he really puts it, you know, he really puts it like it is. I really wish I could talk like, but this really doesn't do that. I mean, a lot of these lyrics are like something a sad teenager would write down in their notebook or something, hoping somebody would see it. But so that's the problem I have with the album, is there's this kind of lack of poetry, this lack of brilliance. And it just, the lyrics are just very, very base. Doom and gloom for sure, but just kind of there. The music as well is kind of ordinary. Waiting for some kind of thing that's like, oh, that's cool, or wow, that brings it up, you know, a level of, because these guys are masters, right? These guys are, you know, they've got the legitimacy to like, okay, these are the go-to guys when you want this type of music. Let's hear how the pros do it, who have been doing it for decades, and that never really happens here. It's the music is kind of like, you know, it just kind of goes along. It's the synthy stuff. It's the, you know, the loops and the beats and stuff like that. There's a nice tremolo in a song called Don't Say You Love Me that kind of is different. But other than that, music is very, very kind of base, you know, kind of ordinary. So I'm not really thrilled with this album. I don't hate it, but it's just kind of there. And, you know, if you're in the kind of mood where you just want to wallow and wallow and wallow in loss and sadness and gloom and darkness, and you just want to wallow, you don't want any kind of hope, you don't want any resolve, you don't want any brilliance, you don't want any clever songwriting, you don't want any masterful poetry, check out Depeche Mode's latest, Memento Mori. So Paramore to me is kind of like Yo La Tengo. They're a band, obviously they haven't been around as long as Yo La Tengo, but they're a band that I kind of have heard about. I've heard maybe a couple of their tracks or whatever, but I'm not really, didn't really know that much about them. So it was great to hear a full album from them. And they've been gone for a while out of the scene. I think this is like their 8th or 9th album, but they haven't had an album out in like 6 years or something like that. I know there's a couple of solo Hayley Williams albums that are out there. She's been focused on her hair dye product, apparently for a while. And now they're back to making music again. And the very first song is the title track, This Is Why. This is why I don't leave the house. You know, turn off the news, turn off the news. So very relatable lyrics to me once again. So that's always good to hear. I love turning off the news. There really isn't news anymore. It's just a bunch of, you know, first of all, I've worked in media for about 35 years, so I know all about what I'm talking about here. News is a thing of the past. It's pretty much just people trying to tell people what they want to hear and get those ratings and please those advertisers. Hit that demographic, pretty much. So not into that, turn that off. And yeah, this is why I don't leave the house, because there's crazy people out there that believe the news. So yeah, you just stay home and then shut the door and close all the windows. Anyway, great way to kick off the album. I love the lyrics that are like modern day type reflections that kind of go with what's going on in the world today. So that's pretty cool. They've got this active relatability in the first couple of tracks, and then that goes away a little bit as the album goes on. It becomes kind of pandering with songs like Running Out of Time, which is just your basic pop song about, you know, poor time management, basically. She can't do this because she's running out of time. She'd like to do this, but she's running out. Oh, I'm running out of time. It's like, you know, I don't know. It's like Rebecca Black or something doing that Friday thing. It's not a very, I don't care for that song at all. And then the silly C'est Comme Ça thing, not into that. Kind of a silly, kind of punkish kind of thing going on. Not really into the pop punk thing either. And so, yeah, at least Hayley Williams waits until like, I think it's the 5th track called Big Man, Little Dignity to start talking about guys. I love it when female singers have different subject matter than love songs and talking about guys and their boyfriend or their boyfriend's breaking up or whatever. I mean, there's obviously a lot of female-fronted bands and female solo artists that make entire albums out of nothing but relationship-type songs. And I'm not here for that. So I'm glad that Paramore is not like that. And they at least waited till about halfway through the album to start that. So not a big fan of that song, but You First, I think, is after that. They kind of get things back on track there. There's a great line about feeling like you're in a horror movie and you're both the killer and the final girl. So that's pretty cool. There's actually a movie like that where the killer is the final girl. It's a French movie. I won't spoil it by giving you the title. But anyway, so yeah, a fun album. I love the music is organic. It's as organic and out of the box as you're going to get for pop music these days. People playing real instruments. The music seems to kind of have its own thing going on while the lyrics are doing this over here. So it's a little bit, disjointed in that way. But yeah, I don't know if this, like I said, Paramore hasn't been around for a while. So I don't know if this is a triumphant comeback or if this is a big disappointment, because I'm not familiar with the earlier Paramore. So you'll have to ask some big Paramore fans what the case is there. But the album's got like a lot of energy. It's a lot of fun, especially those first few tracks, or first couple tracks anyway. And then like halfway through side 2, it kind of takes a down tempo. But it's great. There's a song called Liar that proves that, all the fun and frivolity, they can also slow things down and give a really nice ballad that's kind of lush and kind of full soundscape going on there. They follow it up with Crave, which is also kind of another down-tempo song, but that one sounds a little more like middle-of-the-road type modern alternative or modern adult contemporary kind of thing going on there. So that one's not as good, but the album kind of winds down, gets a little more reflective, and so you get kind of a whole spectrum there as far as tempo and ideas like that. So Paramore, This Is Why, a decent album. I'm glad that I finally have heard a Paramore album after hearing a lot about them over the years, or at least hearing something about them. And yeah, first song is great. There's other great songs in there, You First, and then the ballad Liar. Not so great songs, like I said, the pandering ones, the ones with the overly simplified lyrics, like Running Out of Time. Not a fan of those. They kind of straddle that line like a lot of groups do, between like going full on pop and trying to throw in like post-punk stuff and pop rock stuff and whatever. So Paramore, This Is Why, decent album, but like I said, is this their best album? Is this their worst album? I don't know. I don't know any other Paramore. But I do know that is 8 albums from 2023 from the first third of the year, and that's going to wrap things up for this video. If you know of any great albums from this year that you think I should check out, please leave those in the comments. Or if you got some opinions about the albums I just talked about, leave those in the comments as well. And if you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up if you would, please. Once again, I'm Robert Fithen. I'm going to go ahead and take my dick and 2 balls and head on out, and hopefully I will talk to you again next time.